Welcome to Custom Creator. I am Danny, and that is Greg. We're disguised today. This is something that we've thoroughly enjoyed. Kind of like a life-changing type thing, really. In fact, there are many people in the comments of this documentary about Muscle Shoals that say it changed their life. And people that didn't like social media, ADHD people that couldn't sit through 10 minutes have watched this hour-and-a-half documentary several times without having to stop. So
it's literally one of the best stories I've ever heard. There's so much to take from it.
Yeah, from the music to the fact that it took place in Alabama and the worst point of segregation, and all the artists there, to the story of Rick Hall and all.
Yeah. Wow.
The lady that walked 500 miles back home, and the inception of several bands, the Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner. I mean, Jimi Hendrix has been there. The Rolling Stones, for God's sake.
Debuts or the like coming out of various artists like Percy Sledge and Aretha Franklin. So much.
And the fact that the Beatles and the Stones both covered songs from the Fame Studios. Yeah. And there was a show, Fame, right? I have to believe that's what that was about. It was written the same way and everything. About a bunch of white and black artists that get together and that get along together, kind of like Remember the Titans, but a music studio.
With dancing,
yeah. I love that movie. All right, so there you go. Let's hear a story. Sorry, I hear snoring. There you go.
That's where it all started.
Can you take that banner off there?
Again.
Muscle Shoals. The Fame Recording Studio. There's the Swampers. They've been known to pick a song or two. I believe that's that Mick Jagger guy. There's the whole group. And
look at that.
Won a few awards to be the most unknown band in history. In fact, the only band that didn't get a chance to record at Fame, which they did. They recorded all their music there, but forget the story. We'll hear it later. The Sweet Home Alabama reference. Muscle Shoals has got Swampers. They've been known to pick a song or two. That's really the only reason people even know them. The incredible story, true story of a small town with a big sound. Montgomery, Alabama. All right, we left off with Mr. King giving his great speech in Washington about when boys and girls in Alabama can hold hands and get along, white or black. I wish Mr. King could have seen. We have the same birthdays, by the way. Me and Martin Luther King. And I wish he could have seen that people were getting along in Muscle Shoals. Best kept secret, I guess. All right.
Let's do it.
It was always, if I met a white boy, I had to say, "This is Mr. Robert or Mr. Jimmy." But in the studio, we got away from that. It was Jimmy, it was Robert, it was Clarence,
You could go that way. On we go. Or something like, I'm doing.
Do that one more time.
You just worked together. You never thought about who was white and who was black.
You write that down.
You thought about the common thing, and it was the music.
We were colorblind. There was never any situation came up in the studio here ever about you're black and I'm white.
You think about the South. They didn't believe that black and white people could live together. And here are vinyl records that prove that not only can they live together, you mightn't know who's black and who's white. At the time, this was revolutionary stuff.
Music played a big part in changing the thoughts of people, especially in the South, about race. By us being in Muscle Shoals and putting music together, I think it went a long ways to help people understand that we all were just humans.
My start went sky high with Wexler after the Percy Sledge single went #1 worldwide. And he said, Rick, I've had a little bit of a dispute with Jim Stewart at Stax, and he don't want me to cut any more records over to his studio.
The welcoming mat for me at Memphis was cold. So I got the idea of calling Rick Hall and say, hey, can I bring Wilson Pickett down here and make some records with you guys? Which we did.
I gets off the plane, Southern Airlines, and here this long, tall, white man, we call him Peckerwoods.
I met Wilson Pickett, picked him up at the airport. He looked like, to me, a dangerous man.
He walked up like he'd known me for 500 years. Hey, Wilson, come on, we're going to cut some fucking records. Boy, we're going to really cut some records. Come on, Wilson, come on. I said, wait, I'm nervous, you know what I mean? Now, what does white man know about producing a Wilson Pickett?
And on the way to the studio, I'd look at him and he'd look at me, and I could see it in his eyes. He was thinking, what am I doing with this cracker down here in Alabama?
We went through the cotton patch, people still picking cotton. I said, is that what I think it is? Yeah, wasn't they still picking cotton down here? You could see a studio from the cotton patch.
Pickett had a very quick temper.
I was there to make it work, period. You know what I mean?
On the session, he didn't like what was going on and didn't like the attitude. He's just liable to whoop the drummer. Say, come outside, I'm going to beat your ass.
I was nervous. I was sitting behind the drums, and I was getting things to get like drummers do and checking things.
Our band was super nervous the first time we worked for Jerry Wexler. We had this feeling that if we couldn't play what he asked us to play, we'd probably be fired on the spot.
I was apprehensive, very leery, because it was entirely different from what we had been doing in New York, which was recording with written arrangements.
I'm going to try to go to Google Photos to see if it works better. Seems to be lagging a little bit because it's a big file. That's right. Probably not attached to nothing. So,
yeah.
If you want to talk a little bit, where are we at here? This gentleman talking about. Okay, got it.
I was noticing that. Sorry.
No, yeah, I'm still listening.
Yeah. Wilson Pickett aged really well. Like he still looked young, still felt vital. It's the music keeps you young, I guess. It's B.B. King always used to say the blues is the tonic for what ails you. But I mean, props to Rick Hall. He's fearless. He'll throw himself into pretty much anything. He's gone up to this dude, doesn't know him from Adam's, like, hey, what's up? Wilson's like, all right, who are you? But, you know, I mean, you can understand him being a bit standoffish at first, but you know, he gave respect when it was earned.
Sure.
Yeah, just your ears are colorblind, I guess. I like what Bono said. It's nice to see Bono so humble and feeling a bit human here.
Yeah, I wondered about that because it doesn't say that they recorded there. I wonder if Bono's just intrigued by the story because.
Yeah, or just a fan. Yeah.
Or just wanted to, get this out there to people. I guess. I mean.
Yeah.
Because
good on him.
I can't see a real reason.
I think for the most part, Bono's
in it.
I think his heart's in the right place. I just think sometimes he needs to put some ice on his head to reduce the swelling. That's all. But I never met the guy.
I love the fact that he's in it. I mean, yeah. I just started thinking about it, and
maybe he wishes he could have recorded there.
Yeah, because I mean, he talks about how they were hearing about this place overseas.
Yeah.
In a time where there wasn't a whole lot of communication. So
That's cool. It's that like all the, the racial divides and the prejudice and whatnot. Once you got in the studio, that just kind of blew away. And it was just musicians and people interacting and creating art together. That's just a beautiful thing.
he said you could see the cotton field from the studio.
Is that what I
it's
think
not
it
funny
is?
that was just normal.
Yeah.
That's why everyone was so close.
Yeah.
Or that's why all the southern rock and roll artists and country artists were so close to the African American community. They grew up with them.
Yep.
Singing in the fields. No
studio.
different than, I guess, if you were at a job or something. It's different than a job, but
Yeah.
to them, the camaraderie part of it and, the going through the struggle together part couldn't have been much different. I'm looking, man. I've almost got it. I didn't mark it. I just downloaded it. If you want to press pause for a second.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought downloading that file would be better. All right, let's do it.
Was pulled. So I got the idea of calling Rick Hall and say, hey, can I bring Wilson Pickett down here and make some records with you guys? Which we did.
Man, he walked up like he known me for 500 years. Hey, Wilson, come on, we're gonna cut some fucking records. Boy, we're gonna really cut some records. Come on, Wilson, come on. I said, wait, I'm nervous, you know what I mean? Now, what does white man know about producing a Wilson Pickett?
And on the way to the studio, I'd look at him and he'd look at me, and I could see it in his eyes. He was thinking, now, what am I doing with this cracker down here in Alabama?
We went through the cotton patch, people still picking cotton. I said, is that what I think it is? Yeah, wasn't they still picking cotton down there? You could see a studio from the cotton patch.
Pickett had a very quick temper.
I was there to make it work, period. You know what I mean?
On the session, he didn't like what was going on and didn't like the attitude. He's just liable to whoop the drummer. Said, come outside, I'm gonna beat your ass.
I was nervous. I was sitting behind the drums, and I was getting things together like drummers do and checking things.
Our band was super nervous the first time we worked for Jerry Wexler. We had this feeling that if we couldn't play what he asked us to play, we'd probably be fired on the spot.
I was apprehensive, very leery, because it was entirely different from what we had been doing in New York, which was recording with written arrangements, arrangers, and studio players who read the charts.
We would get in the studio and we would add a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then we'd go to lunch, come back, and we didn't like that, take it away, then all that kind of stuff.
So am I to understand they're doing this without a tempo?
Yeah, they're basically improvising it. They're writing it live almost, and then I guess playing it, just taking what they like, discarding what they don't. Yeah, no.
Not gonna call any names. If you watch this, you know who you are. But I was adamantly told that music could not be made without a tempo. Tempo is music fundamentally.
Sit there and we'd make that record together. Those guys would sit there in that studio and just find the groove, And I'd be right there with them singing along, and we'd all work it out together. Rick Hall, he stuck there every minute. Rick Hall was his own engineer. He built the studio. He knew all the electric wiring in there. And that drummer they had was fantastic. He was a funky drummer, but he wasn't wearing himself out all over the place. He was just there. We was cooking away on the thing, and Wexler was in the control room. He said, hey, baby, it's working. Hey, baby, it's funky.
Rick Hall had a rhythm section of exceptional players.
You know I feel all right.
This was very inspirational to me.
Jerry came out at the end of the first day. We had just cut Land of 1,000 Dances. And he walks out in front of Roger, and Roger's ears had never heard anything like this.
He said, Roger. I said, yes, sir. He said, Roger, you're a great drummer. And all of a sudden, I just kind of relaxed and became a great drummer, just like he said I was.
After my first night in that studio with them, I was convinced that that could be a recording home for me. Mustang Sally. Oh. We cut Mustang Sally all at funky Broadway, the land of 1,000 whole dances. Boy, and he stood up chewing it. How you like that, woman? Oh, yeah.
Pickett and I were soul brothers. We were.
We was nitty gritty, right down in the cold nitty gritty.
Guess I have to put your flat feet on.
Everything was just roses with me with Jerry Wexler.
Jerry took a liking to us from the very beginning.
There's just something that leaps out of a record. I call it the sonority of the record. It's the way the sound of the record impacts on the ear instantly. And to me, that's the magic ingredient in a phonograph record.
We call it in the South. Or maybe anywhere. What was that word he used? The sonority?
The sonority, yeah.
Well, I guess what does it mean, I guess is what I'm saying. Oh, hell, words me about shit. I wouldn't ask you about it. You know what I mean?
Forget this.
Hell.
Get this.
That's what
it is the quality or fact of being soreness. That's what it's the relative loudness of a sound or speech.
Yeah. What does loud mean? The act of being loud.
Oh. I love the definitions.
Mustang Sally, boy. So what all we heard here? Part one, we found out what wild horses and brown sugar and
when a man loves a woman.
When a man loves a woman, the very first copy, the very first hit that come out of there. Can't remember that man's name. The one right before Percy Sledge.
Put your black feet on the ground.
The Rolling Stones had it, the Beatles had it, and they had it. And so from then on, Muscle Shoals became the place that I prefer to go and love to go.
Appalachia.
I grew up north of Florence. It really wasn't a town, just a dirt road. And the only way to get to Florence at that time, we had no car. My mom and I would walk from the dirt road down to the highway to catch a bus to go into Florence, which was 5 miles away.
I was born in Sheffield, Alabama, and graduated from Sheffield High School. While in high school, I would see Hollis Dixon in the Keynotes. It was the first rock and roll band around here, and I just fell in love with that. I thought, I've got to learn how to do that.
You got Roger Hawkins in a group called the Del Rays. Jimmy Johnson was playing guitar. I remember hearing the Del Rays when I was going to the University of Alabama. And I remember I could not get into the fraternity house. So I had to stay outside and listen to it. I mean, the ground was rumbling. Okay, it was such a great band.
We met each other when we started playing at the Tuscumbia National Guard Armory at the Square Dance. Half the night was rock and roll, and then after that it was all square dance. We made $10 each for that.
After Wilson Pickett, I became Jerry's right-hand man. And so he said, I'm thinking about signing a new act. Her name is Aretha Franklin. She's on CBS Records, and it's not happening. They can't sell records on her.
I'm only one
Yeah, I remember I had to record this on the older computer, and it's just got spots where it lags. But it catches back up all the time. I talked to a few people, and they had no idea that Aretha Franklin sang for 5 years and didn't go anywhere. Like, I didn't know that either, actually.
I didn't either. Like, yeah, you think you just jumped on stage and boom, there it happened. But these things take time.
Well, she had the voice from, well, I think they
always did, yes.
I'd heard her real smooth records on Columbia. You couldn't really get your teeth into them.
These lush arrangements that she was doing at CBS, which weren't successful either. No one knew what to do with it. She had this great voice, but lots of people had a great voice.
I've still got to find out who and what I really am. I don't know yet. I'm trying to find the answer.
I wasn't exactly hoping that she wouldn't have any hits on Columbia Records. But the way it went, they dropped her after 5 years. A week later, we were in my office in New York. We signed her up.
He said, you know, I've got this great little studio down in Muscle Shoals, and these cats are really greasy. You're gonna love it.
She walks in over there. And she's got this aura around her, pretty thick. I mean, the girl was special. I remember watching the guys, being good Southern boys, they'd carry on with anything except looking or dealing with her.
Yeah, I agree. You go to sleep, bud.
Nah, it's all good.
So she walked right over to the piano. She sat there a moment, and then she just hit this unknown chord, I would say. Didn't anybody have to say we're about to cut?
We did what we called head sessions at that time, and there was no real music written for it. The musicians would just listen to what it was I was doing, and then they would decide what they were going to do around that.
I think we heard a little demo of this song, Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You. To me, it sounded pretty much like junk. I'm thinking, that's a song they're going to cut? There was discussions, Jerry Wexler and Rick.
There was a little confusion and there was a little turmoil. Everybody was a little uptight.
We can't find a groove, a beat, a place to start. They were just had all these gears working, but finally it just came to a... And suddenly it was really quiet. They had a song, they had an artist, but nobody knew what to do. Not even all these geniuses. But out of that quietness came Spooner with... And I said, hey, Spooner's got it. That's it. Aretha jumped right on it.
You're no good, heartbreaker. You're a liar and you're a cheat.
It was cut within 15 to 20 minutes. You didn't have to ask, what do you think? Everybody knew it was a hit.
I think everything came together for Aretha in Muscle Shoals. They got Aretha to record a much more funky kind of style in Muscle Shoals. It was really the essence of her.
Coming to Muscle Shoals was the turning point. That's where I recorded I Never Loved a Man, which became my first million-selling record. So absolutely, it was a milestone and the turning point in my career.
We cut I Never Loved a Man.
I like how this is not someone telling the story. This is the people that lived it telling the stories.
That adds so much to it. Yeah,
I think that's what sets this apart from any other documentary I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. It's from the mouths of those that experienced it. I was thinking about the the Swampers, the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, and we talked about their resume, how no one's going to equal that. But just think about being a musician and just being able to record with all of this talent, being able to share art.
Yeah, I
with
think
all
that's
of
why
these
they've
artists
never
of this caliber.
They never gave a damn about accolades.
Yeah.
They didn't care that people. They look what they got to experience.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Wow.
And sometimes by sitting back and, I mean, they can't take all the credit. I mean, they were the backing band, but they were the greatest backing band in the history of the world.
Yeah. I mean,
by
look how many of these.
Far.
Yeah, as like a lot of these guys are saying, even Wilson Pickett mentioned how good the drummer was, and she talks about them. Just they're always the
75 multi-platinum albums.
Yeah, all these diverse artists with all of these accolades have nothing but good things to say about the Swampers.
Really, the whole operation.
Yeah.
There's one tumultuous experience we're about to hear about, I think, which is the inception of another one of her songs,
which people to this day still regard as being maybe her most soulful and really funkiest record.
That's one of those songs, the ones that give you the chills, the ones that give you the goosebumps, the ones that you like, I wish I sang a record like that.
We had a whole week planned to cut tracks a whole week. But at the end of the session, we found out that there was a problem.
There was a ruckus. One of the horn players and Aretha's then husband, Ted White, got into it.
This new horn player started saying things like, "Aretha, baby." And it was just enough that Ted White got offended.
They'd been drinking from the same jug, and now this camaraderie and great palship turned into some kind of alcoholic hostility.
Ted comes into the control room with Wexler and I and says, I want the trumpet player fired. I looked at Wexler and said, what do you think? He said, go fire him. So I went and fired him.
That later caused a big argument and caused the session to end.
I got a hold of the bottle of vodka and I took three drinks of it. And I said, Wex, I'm going to go over to the hotel and get with Ted and them and we'll work this thing out. He said, no, I don't want you to go. And I said, yeah, well, I'm not going to start any trouble. I said, I'll go over and work it out. We'll become buddies and I'll work everything out. He said, no, Rick, don't go. Please don't go.
He knew.
So anyhow, I'd had a couple more drinks and I went over there. Banged on Ted and Aretha's door, and Ted came to the door and he started pointing his finger in my face and so forth. And we fought and fought and fought. He was trying to throw me over the balcony and I was trying to throw him. It was the downtown and we was up on about the 4th floor.
My former husband never came back that night, and I decided that I was leaving. I'd never been to Muscle Shoals before or away from home, really, by myself, and so I just said, I'm going to the airport. And when I got to the airport, I saw him with the bell captain. I said, whoa, this son of a gun was going to leave me down here. Unbelievable.
They left town the next day, early. So Wexler came and said to me, I will never set foot in this studio as long as I live again. I will bury you. And I said, you can't bury me. He said, why can't I? I said, because you're too old. I'll be around after you're gone.
So the next day I showed up and on the board it says session canceled. And I thought, oh man, it's over, we've had it. But a few days later, Jerry Wexler calls and asks if we can go to New York and finish the album there.
He didn't have to ask us twice. On that album was R-E-S-P-E-C-T, Respect.
What you want, baby, I
part of something like that is unbelievable. It was milestone stuff.
Swampers went on and recorded with Aretha on many hit records.
Well, there was Aretha with Martin Luther King. Maybe he did know about Muscle Shoals. It's hard to imagine why he wouldn't have talked about it. I don't know. Maybe that was after.
Could be.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But I just noticed that. But yeah, the whole sock it to me is about Rick Hall and her husband fighting.
First of all, no happy story ever starts with, I'd had a couple more drinks.
I went to talk to him. We'll be buddies after this.
Rick is not the sort that's going to take any shit. Like he's a fighter. If he wasn't, none of this ever would have came to be. So
I imagine her husband was too. I mean,
it
sounds like they fought for a while.
Irresistible force and a movable object colliding there. Yeah, that was quite a scuffle.
We already know to this point all the things he had already overcame. So I imagine that was easy compared to, especially the car wreck, some of the other things.
Sweet, sweet baby, natural woman, think, the house that Jack built, call me, do right woman, do right man, chain of fools, and so many, many others.
Of course, it worked out incredibly. And it's been one of the anomalies, I think, of the era that Aretha's greatest work came with a studio full of Caucasian musicians. How do you figure it? This is the Queen of Soul acknowledged. Here we have Roger Hawkins and David Hood, Jimmy Johnson, Barry Beckett, Spooner Oldham, coming out with probably the deepest and most intense R&B of the era.
R-E-S-P-C-T, find out what it means to me. R-E-S-P-C-T, T-F-T-C-T.
So let's be clear, there was not one African American that had anything to do with that recording other than Aretha Franklin. I say this for no other reason than I don't believe anybody on earth will believe if you tell them that.
Yeah, all that soul and that deep funk created by some of the dorkiest looking white dudes you'll ever see.
But who grew up around nothing but African Americans singing
No
around
doubt.
in the fields.
That's a classic case of not judging a book by its cover.
Exactly. And to point out the fact that in the North, where everything was hunky-dory, there was no racism, she couldn't find her soul.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Yep.
So after my dispute with Wexler, he took Aretha away. And on my part, I felt like I really screwed up. So I went to Chicago and I spoke to Leonard Chess because he said, I wonder what I got to do to get you to do some sides for Chess Records. I said, who do you want me to do? He said, I'd like you to do Etta James.
When I looked at him, I said, this guy's Rick Hall, so this is Fame Recording Studios, and I'm in Alabama, and now this is going to be, the real thing here. I'm going to get some of this Alabama mud and, all of that kind of stuff.
Etta James is probably one of my favorite chicks of all time. Leonard said, Rick, I built my company on her back. When you think she's singing as good as she can sing, if you'll kick her ass and wind her up, so she can rattle the shingles on this studio.
She may be the only other female I ever can reference to having the same weird high tone that Vanilla Rosie has.
Yeah.
Girl, want to love you and give you the world.
Rick Hall was actually the first white man that I had seen that had that kind of soul, that was an engineer and was soulful,
We recorded a Clarence Carter song. With Clarence, it was Tell Daddy, but with Etta, it was Tell Mama.
She didn't want to do the song because I think she had a problem with somebody suggesting to her that she was going to take care of some man.
I would be so hard-headed and, just don't tell me nothing,
She had a temper like a lion. I said, if you'll do it for an hour, if it's not happening, we'll garbage it. We'll throw it in the garbage.
I finally realized everything that he used to badger me about, he was always right.
Tell Mom, all about it. Tell Mom what you need. Tell Mama.
And of course, the record was to become a big hit on her.
Everybody said that song raised her from the grave, and brought her back to prominence. Each time a person went to Muscle Shoals, they came out of there with a hit record. You had to know that there was something magic in Muscle Shoals.
The spirit of Muscle Shoals permeates not only the city itself physically, but I think the people who came through there. The place has a soul.
W.C. Handy was from the Muscle Shoals area, and everyone that knows about the blues is familiar with W.C. Handy.
He's one of the great popularizers of the blues. Before it was a kind of gut bucket music that didn't have a lot of respect, he kind of legitimized the music.
All the bands were playing the same thing, but no one had written it down. Well, he was the first one to write it down. That made him the father of the blues and made this area famous.
Sam Phillips was also from the Muscle Shoals area, and Sam was kind of my tutor, and I kind of looked upon him as being the guy I wanted to be.
Sam Phillips came out of there. I mean, didn't he invent rock and roll or something?
My dad, Sam Phillips, was the first to record Elvis, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, Roy Orbison. But a lot of people don't realize that he only worked specifically with black artists in the very beginning.
Well, the basic feeling I had for a black artist, of course, originated when I was very young on a farm in Alabama. I felt a certain spirituality about the black man's music, and hearing it in the cotton fields, that made one hell of an impression on me.
How did I miss this the first time?
Yeah, that's.
So you tell me the man that first recorded with Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis Presley is from the cotton fields right beside Muscle Shoals?
What it sounded like. That's.
I've always wondered if Elvis Presley had anything, if he even knew about Muscle Shoals. Apparently so.
Phillips heard people singing in fields and heard trains rumbling through and the river roaring around the bend down here in the Shoals. There's a subconscious rhythm that gets in your head. There's like a groove, there's a pocket that sticks in your gut. It's connected all of us.
Helen Keller was from Muscle Shoals.
Wow.
And it was just always amazing to me the things she was able to accomplish being blind and deaf.
Helen Keller was deaf, completely mute, completely blind, and her only way of communicating with the world is with gestures. You can still go to her house and see the well where she learned her first word, which was water.
There's obviously an incredible connection to water here. So you can see why that would be the first word that Helen Keller learned, water. There's such a power in this place, and you feel it whether you can hear it and see it or not.
I'm a great believer that landscape is always very important in music, and somehow music can reflect landscapes.
Something told me it was over.
You ever heard of R.C. Cola?
Garcia.
Okay.
When I saw you and her talking.
People ask me always, what is the Muscle Shoals sound?
You had a lot of black musicians playing with a lot of white musicians, and we all got a different way of playing, but it blends so well together.
There was this coming together of styles.
And there's some hillbilly background there. There's some black music. We were open-minded to be any genre.
Ooh, I would rather go blind, boy.
Because when it comes down to it, music does not have a genre. It just has different sounds.
Than to see you walk away from me, child.
The Muscle Shoals sound, I think, has a very heavy bass and drum featured in the sound. It just, that was what sounded right to us. Turn up the bass, turn up the drums.
This was, at the time, cutting-edge technology. The fact that a drum kit could be close-mic'd meant that they could turn up the bass drum. That's what created that blacker sound, that African sound, that allowed you to be sweet on the topsoil, but knowing that deep down in the ground there was some fierceness.
I was just sitting here thinking of your kiss and your warm embrace.
Woo! Come on, man! Woo! Woo!
When I was a young boy, my mother was washing clothes out in the yard with a wash pot, and the pot had boiling hot water in it. My brother, who was 3 years old, was playing in the backyard with my first cousin, and they were pulling on a stick. My brother ran backwards and fell into the pot of scalding water. So my mother took him in her arms and went screaming across the field, hunting my father. He came running, and they took him to the doctor in Red Bay, Alabama. And they took his clothes off, and all of his skin came off inside of his clothes. He died 3 days later. That was the start of the decline between my father's and my mother's relationship. He kind of blamed her for the accident, and she probably blamed him for not being at home. She left us and said, "I'll never live with you again, and forget about me." But she moved in with Aunt S, who ran a red light district.
You know what that is?
Yeah. It's prostitution.
I mean, so for anybody that missed the first one, Rick Hall had an accident with his wife. She died. He grew up with no running water, no toiletries,
No
sleeping
floor,
on the floor.
even. Yeah. It's just dirt.
sleeping on the dirt, yeah. And was very bitter after the thing with his wife. He became a drunk and a vagabond and a whore. Finally, he came back and made it work and opened the studio, lived in his car, parked around back. And now this happens with his brother that tears his entire family apart. A family who already grew up with nothing. And not only did his mom leave, she goes to be work in the red light district, which had to make his dad bitter and mean and ornery. And
that's This Rick's story is one of those where if you told it to someone, they'd just be like, "Okay, that's just interesting. What movie is that, or what book is that?" It's like, no, this was a dude that actually, you can just tell by looking at him. Like he sort of got that, even when he's sort of just sitting down and it's kind of mellow, he sort of got that, that fire going in his face. That's a guy who's not going to be held down. He may stumble, he may fall, life may knock him down, but it's not going to keep him down.
Maybe the only man I know with a harder story than Hank Williams Jr.
Yeah. And I do want to, you and I have talked about this before, and I understand it's only natural to want to make people as happy and as content as possible. But it is interesting how so many great artists and so many, great works of art come from places of, sorrow, places of pain, just places of, for lack of a better term, a lot of good things come from very bad places. Rick Hall is an example of that. He's taken all of his pain and created some of the most, helped create some of the most beautiful things the world's ever heard.
Yeah.
So my father asked people what she was doing up here. And they said, well, Herman, you know what the other girls are doing? And he said, yes, I do. And they said, Dolly's doing the same thing. It was earth-shattering for me. Even after all these years and being away from her and not spending much time with her in my life, not a day goes by that I don't really miss my mother. More acoustic guitar. There's too much happening. I just need the intro, and everybody needs to cool it a little bit and back off. If everybody comes in from the top, where are you going to go from there? If you get a chance or two to cut a record, produce a record, and get a budget to do it with, and you don't have a hit, you will never get another call. So I was always aware of that. I always felt that every record, my life depended on it. Time is like, time. It's like you're whispering that part.
All right, y'all can always do mine over.
I know we can, honey, but I like to do it this way.
All right, Rick is so meticulous. Oh, it's just a joy and pain to work with Rick. Because he won't stop until he gets what he wants. If it takes 3 days on one song, Rick's going to get what he wants.
We're doing just what we just got through doing. We're doing the same thing over again, and I just want to perfect it a little better. We've changed a couple.
So it seems like if he wouldn't have went through all that tragedy, then he wouldn't be the producer that he was. Or definitely wouldn't. He seemed to always be that way, but I guess a little more driven. I mean, you'd almost have to be.
Yeah, not wanting to go back to sleeping on the floors definitely is a motivating factor. I do think like a good producer, that entails a lot. Like pretty much he's an engineer. He knows how the studio works. He knows what he wants from his music, but also he knows how to work with people of different temperaments, different backgrounds, different walks of life. I think honestly the fact that he's been through as much as he has, it sort of gives him, like, as driven as he is, he does understand where people's limits are, and he knows how to sort of coax them to overcome them. Like, and a lot of people like that, they may seem harsh and difficult to deal with at first, but, you know, you stick with them, you keep working, and the minute you earn their respect, they'll stick with you till the end.
Yeah, because they all say that he was an ass when they worked with him, but they appreciated it afterwards.
Yeah.
It's almost like every album was another first impression.
Yeah.
I don't know what I got from that.
I mean, it's good. He doesn't take anything for granted.
Right.
Thanks. So you got to listen. Rick was a very demanding boss. He would take 1,000 takes of something till he was satisfied. And sometimes he would not know what he was looking for, but he would keep working until he got it.
I'm talking about it's too bright.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted the bright.
Well, I did want it bright until I heard it. Now, when you hear it with a track, it's a whole different thing. I mean, you got to listen to it in perspective.
That was very frustrating and hard on the musicians because you think, well, I already did that.
Nobody ever worked in the music business without getting their ass kicked. If they did, they're on the street somewhere pushing a wheelbarrow of concrete.
He was kind of like a taskmaster. And I don't fault him for that because he is an imperfect perfectionist. That's what made him great, though.
Oh, please forgive me, darling. I ain't easy to love.
That guitar sounds familiar.
Dwayne Allman, of course, came into Muscle Shoals and wanted a gig. So he put up his pup tent on my parking lot at the studio, and finally I gave him his shot.
When Dwayne showed up, he was probably one of the first guys with long hair and kind of the hippie look. But what really made him stand out was he was a wonderful guitar player.
This is where the truth be told.
This blew me away when I saw it, among other things. But yeah, this.
Yeah, I didn't know it was to this extent. I knew that David Anaco's got a song. Country DJs all think I'm an outlaw, and they never come to see me in this dive, where bikers scare the cowboys who are laughing at the hippies who are praying they'll get out of there alive. So.
I had never heard a slide guitar played like Dwayne Allman could play it.
Dwayne had been in Los Angeles, had a group called the Hourglass with his brother Greg.
They signed us on this big contract, and they wouldn't let us play anywhere. I think the first year we were there, we played like 3 concerts. So he finally said, hey, I've had it with this place. I'm leaving. And he wound up in Muscle Shoals. But right before he left, I talked him into going horseback riding with me because we weren't doing anything. Finally went out there and I said, listen, when we go from the barn out to the field, we got to cross a paved road. I said, the horse is shod. It's what? It's got shoes on, you know? And if he slips, he'll bust both of his butts. So don't give him any reins. And guess what happened? And he hit right here. He couldn't play. And he wouldn't let me in his house for about 6 weeks. And I mean, that was terrible because, I mean, you know, growing up without a father, he was somewhat of a father figure to me, even though he was only a year and 18 days older. So it came his birthday, November the 20th, and I went out and bought the first Taj Mahal record and a bottle of Chlorocidin pills. He had his cold, and he had his arm in a sling. He was pissed off at the world, and I did what I could do. I put it down in front of his door, had it wrapped up and everything, and I knocked on the door and ran. I guess about 2.5 hours later, my phone rings and it's him. He says, "Get over here, Babe Ruth, quick." And Babe Ruth, he called me that baby brother, endearing handle he had for me. He said, "Man, check this out." He'd been listening to Jessie Davis play from Taj Mahal, and he was playing slide. He said, "Man, I dumped out all them pills, and I washed the label off the bottle." He said, "Check this out." He's got his hand still in the sling, and he's going, you know, and he's just already killing it, you know. I've still got that bottle, by the way, somehow.
Of course he does.
When Dwayne came here, he was on the Wilson Pickett session that we did.
There was always a slight problem when we would go out, all of us white boys, with a black artist, that we'd get looks, okay? But there was nothing as bad as going out with a long-haired hippie with us white boys. They couldn't stand that, right? And so both of them stayed back.
So they went on lunch break, and my brother went up to Wilson, and he said, "Man, why don't you cut Hey Jude, you know, Beatles song?"
At that point, I was mostly trying to create an original career Wilson Pickett, right? My songs.
Pickett and I, in unison, both said, "Look, are you crazy? We're going to cover the Beatles?" And of course, Dwayne said, "Exactly."
While we were gone, Dwayne changed their whole session.
Just remember to let out your skin.
When you get to the vamp, it goes into just an unbelievable groove. Dwayne Allman was playing such great guitar fills that something happens in that vamp. And all of a sudden, there was Southern rock. That was the beginnings of the Allman Brother Band.
Let me hear this right. Southern rock was born from basically African American music. Make sure I heard that right.
I believe you did.
I'm not being sarcastic or spiteful. This is something I've been passionate about for a long time. It's not like I'm trying to prove anybody wrong. But boy, have I had some looks and some comments when I say anything about this. There's that swamp. You're sick.
Just the picture of Wilson and Dwayne looking at each other with the giant smiles on their face, that was heartwarming. And just the
fact they stayed behind, the hell with it. They don't call us a hippie or a Negro. You know what I'm saying? We're going to stay behind.
I did think that was funny, though. If you went out with an African American, you'd get looks, but nothing was as bad as going out with a long-haired hippie.
Nothing like a hippie.
And I don't think a lot of younger people realize, when I saw the first Rambo, when the sheriff was like, "What are you doing in town? We don't want people like you." And I know Stallone kind of had the mullet, but in the book he's supposed to have long hair, and that was, you were outcast, excommunicated, cast aside if you were a dude with long hair back in the day. People don't realize that. That was some crazy, but I didn't realize it was to that extent. Wow, that is something.
Hippies were a threat to government and institutional power, we'll say, because they were free thinking. They were taking LSD and smoking reefer. They didn't need to consume anything. They had all they needed in that creek bank right there. They didn't need shit.
And then just the stuff with Greg and Dwayne, it just shows. It doesn't matter how talented you are, how many hit songs you're going to come out with later. Brothers going to be brothers. They're going to fight.
This is true.
J-Mo met my brother first. The two of them got together
when I met Dwayne, had a cabin. He lived down on the river in Muscle Shoals. And it was like, it was a nice place down there.
In his spare time, he would do a lot of fishing. Muscle Shoals seemed to be the place for him to be at that time.
He would do sessions, and I would sit over there and practice. When he would get through with the session, he'd roll his amplifier over there, and the two of us would play. And then when Barry Oakley came down, boy, the three of us, I had never played music like that. But that was pretty much the base of what turned out to be the Allman Brothers Band.
Dwayne said, well, Rick, this is the kind of music that's coming in. It's going to be big again. The kids are really liking this stuff. And I said, yeah. Don't breathe on me, Dwayne. Back off. I never believed him, and I told Phil Walden, I don't understand this. They're sleeping in the studio all day under quilts and things. And I wake up Dwayne, and he says, man, you know, the stars and the moon are not quite lined up right. I'm not into all that. He said, well, hang in there, man. Turn on the machines and let them run. And eventually you're going to make $1 billion. I said, I can't do that. It's not me. So I missed the vote on that one.
Hear that whistle blowing, coming around the bend. Sturgill Simpson drove a train.
Time, old time.
My daddy drove a train.
Things change it, you know. I'll never forget when Jimi Hendrix played behind me on Broadway. He was playing the band with King Curtis, and I told King, I think I'm gonna steal that guitar player you got. He said, Percy Slade, that guy there's gonna be so big in the next year or two, so I can't keep him and you won't be able to keep him either. When Jimmy came out with his style of music, well, our style of music kind of slacked back. Time always changes organizations and things that you're doing in life.
Things happened in our world that changed everything. We decided to become entrepreneurs and become studio owners. So we had to tell Rick, who was our mentor and friend and who had gave us our chance.
Oh, no.
We elected Roger to go break the news to him.
I had gone to L.A. to try to make a new deal with Capitol Records. We made a great deal, and things were really exciting. And I came back and had a meeting with the Swampers.
We're supposed to come up and sign the contract and be exclusive to Rick.
Rick's office is upstairs, and we're just kind of looking at each other like, oh my God, we got to go up those stairs. Up the stairs we go, knock on the door, everybody's quiet.
I began to tell them of this great new deal we'd made with Capitol.
I'm looking at them like, come on, guys, help me. And they're just like.
One of the guys stopped me and said, we've already made a deal with Jerry Wexler, and he is going to build us a studio across town. We'll be leaving here, going with him.
And when Roger dropped that bomb in that office, we were expecting a huge explosion.
I felt like the whole bottom of my life had fell out.
It's like we have thrown shit on his dreams.
Do you remember what he said?
He said, you're never going to make it.
It was war. Total war.
And part 3 will be next.
It's a great place to end it. Yeah, that, like, on one hand, like, you would think, having accomplished so much with those guys, you want to be happy for them for branching out on their own and doing their own thing. But on the other hand, dang it, they were yours. Where are they going? I
See, that's the fan studio. That picture there is in front of the one they go to.
Yeah.
So.
And people might think his response was a little, maybe over the top, or maybe even a little harsh. I'm willing to bet his heart was probably broken, and like that is how he could keep his head in the game. That's how, like, instead of curling up in a ball and sobbing, he's like, all right, it's on. Like, that was, he used it as motivation to keep pushing. So, yeah, Rick Hall is an amazing human being. Like, a lot of these artists, you know, of course, everyone's aware of Percy Sledge, Aretha Franklin, you know, Rolling Stones. People know these names. Rick Hall is a name that I was not familiar with, but in a lot of ways, he is the star of this documentary. It's just the tale of his perseverance and his upbringing and what he had gone through, and but again, just the fact that him being who he was allowed all of this talent to shine in the way it did. Because even the Allman Brothers, it's like Greg and Dwayne, they tried it somewhere else, it wasn't happening. They came down here, boom, magic. You know.
Just think, I'm sure a lot of these people may have made it anyway, but just think of how much music would be erased if Rick Hall would have died in the accident with his wife. I mean,
if he had died, or if he had thrown in the towel and just, you know, got a regular day job.
There may not have been an Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the guy that is who Rick wanted to be like. But still, and yeah, if it wasn't for the competition, you know, it's just an amazing story. And believe it or not, I wouldn't shit y'all. Y'all my favorite turds. It gets better.
Yeah.
Or as good. It does not.
There are no lulls in this story. It's one amazing thing after another.
But boring as far as when he talks about going and seeing that the Del Reys and the college, and that was not boring. That's just like
backstory, essentially. He's just setting things up for the next amazing revelation. But yeah, just the word,
my
like,
personal favorite parts is yet to come.
But the word "must see," people talk about this because they like something. Oh, you must see this. Like, you know, this. I honestly, if you like music, you know, if you have any interest at all in music history, you have to see this. This is the definition of must see. It's an amazing story with so much, not just like trivia, like as far as, you know, how artists got their start or how songs were written, but just, you know, the human element of it. You know, the you know, white people, black people making music together without any segregation or any hint of racism. You know, Rick Hall overcoming everything he did to become as successful as he did. Things like that. And just completely off the beat point, the Wexler guy looks like an evil wizard. I'm sure he's a cool guy, but every time I see him, it's like, yeah. It looks like a Disney villain.
To give a few spoilers away without spoiling anything, we got one of the most iconic or misunderstood. Got a huge band yet to come. Rick Hall is not done with tragedies, and yeah, there's a lot left. So, and yeah, so. We'll see y'all then. It's hour and 8 minutes already. Hour and 10 minutes. So.
Sorry it took so long between parts. We'll try to get part 3 out a little bit sooner. But hopefully this will be worth the wait.
Yeah. Well, I had to line all the audio up because when I recorded it, it was all off. So I had to go back to the olden days, the golden days of Custom Creator, and line all the audio back up. So, because this wouldn't play in Australia. This wouldn't play in a lot of different places. It was, I don't know why, and then all of a sudden it became where you had to pay for it, and it wasn't on YouTube no more. So we had the whole thing with me, you, and Michael, but yeah, that's special. So,
yeah,
the old bloke, he's like, "Hi, man." So that tells you there that Australian music is great, but this is so much like it. Like even was like every couple bands, he was like, "Son of a bitch!" I mean, more people could possibly play here.
Michael, if you're watching, if you see this, hit us up. We missed you, brother.
Yeah, he
Two
changed his
old
picture.
blokes just,
He's
two
still
old blokes
kicking.
just ain't the same.
He changed his picture. We seen that, Michael. All right, much love, everybody.
Thank you all.
Mental health is real.
Very real.
Stigmatisms are real too. Sometimes they're real cloudy. So, time you gotta see the rain. All right, much love.
Love you.